Hi guys, it's Ryan, and this video is a little different as it's not necessarily about Infinity. I mean, it comes up throughout and it's the reason I'm doing this video, but it's not solely focused on Infinity. If you follow my community posts, you'll notice occasionally I supplement them with an update of the models that I paint. And I paint a fair few, no more than maybe 2 a week at most, but I try to paint most evenings I'm not doing something else with my family or doing YouTube stuff. This has resulted in me collecting slowly around 70 Infinity models and about 110 plus Warhammer and Fantasy models. Remember when they said you only need 15 models in an Infinity army? Yeah, no, that was a lie. So in this video I'll talk about me getting into the hobby, the armies I collect, and maybe take some time to talk about the really special ones and just look back over the last 4 or 5 years of my hobby and life. So how did I get into the hobby? Well, I used to play Shadowrun on some subreddits and use Discord to organise this. I used to have a lot of free time and I used to love playing board games with friends on TTS, since my friends were all over the world, and one day in 2017, 18 or 19, somehow either one of the Spanish ones or Cavrion, who now runs a fantastic YouTube channel, go watch it, nagged my ear and said all the right things to get me interested, and eventually I'd play a few games of Infinity. I lost a lot and was kind of salty about it, like a little whinger, but nonetheless I've both matured since then and grown in appreciation of the hobby. But war games grabbed me in a way I didn't expect at all. It had the problem solving and customization of character creation of Dungeons and Dragons and Shadowrun, and the list building, the tactical combat of Shadowrun. Yes, I like Shadowrun 5th edition. It was wild, but it worked somehow. Plus the anime is cool as hell and that's always fun. So we played a few games, lost. But somehow I was hooked. I wanted to paint and play and to enter this ultimate nerdy niche. So Infinity models are highly detailed and I knew that from day one, so I decided to get some cheap ass, at the time, Space Marines. I got a squad of 5 for like 15 quid, I think, 3 easy to build Primaris from a box, plus some paints, plus 2 more for basically free from the store, and I started painting them. I named them all the Silent Vanguard, my OC Please Don't Steal Space Marine chapter, who were basically Wordbearer loyalists. That they're not painted well, but to be honest, I like the scheme. Meant to be more a sort of bone white, I just didn't understand how to highlight at all, so they're not that great. They'll be kept, however, for my daughter to paint when she gets to the copy daddy stage, just something big and chunky I can trust her vaguely with. I also got some Reavers because I was interested in Kill Team, but because I forgot Infinity existed, then I gave up that idea when I remembered Infinity existed and N4 was coming along. I really don't like these, but I'm 90% sure I'd pay more in postage than I'd get from selling them. No one likes Reavers, not even GW. So the first model to focus on is the easy to build Redemptor Dreadnought. Let's not kid ourselves, the phrase, even in death I still serve, is very grimdark but very cool, and Dreadnoughts are so cool. So I got one. Again, like the Marines, it's not well painted. I wasted a bunch of Rakkar Fleth that I keep wanting to buy more of, but I just don't because I'm a bit cheap. But yeah, I'm gonna repaint this and maybe put a nicer base on it and just do something cool. I'll probably get to it after I've finished doing Lord Croak, who has been languishing unpainted in a box for over a year now. So yeah, I kind of have a backlog of repaints. So the next 3 models I bought because I loved painting. 3 cool as hell Terminators or Terminator-like models, because Terminators are also pretty cool. I've always liked heavy armor, as you can see that later, as I'm a heavy infantry fanatic, and these 3 are great. Black Legion is the best scheme and it's the best model in the range, the Chaos Terminators. I'm very tempted to get a squad and make them look great. Honestly, outside of Tau, I'd play Black Legion if I wanted to play a Napoleonic style game like 40k. Or maybe I'll play one-page rules, Kill Team or something like that. The Green Lad is a Death Guard, a Lord of Contagion, and a really nice model that I'm really happy with, even though his scheme's a little basic. I'm super happy with him because I'm colorblind, red-green colorblind in fact, so the fact that he looks vaguely decent at all makes me feel pretty good. Finally is the Gravis Captain, and I love him too, but he's another one on the repaint pile like the Redemptor, just to make the bone armor work a little better and to redo the cape. Other than that, these 3 models really show me that you can paint what you want and you don't necessarily need an army or a game out of it. So the hobby mandated Marines are done. Now for the far cooler GW range, and that's before resculpts. Right now I have 100 plus models of Seraphon, and while I have no desire to play AOS, I might get the new ones because they look so good. So while some pictures of cool lizards play, I'm going to talk about how, like the stereotypical Scots, I'm a cheap bastard, and how I used lizards to really find out how much I love the hobby side of the wargaming hobby. So before I started Infinity with M4, I was very tempted by AOS 2.0, and I even tried a game on TTS, But before this, I bought a bunch of lizards that I thought were pretty cool, and I wanted to play this IRL to have a hobby. This was 2019, early 2020. It didn't go anywhere, but hey, I wanted it to, and there was no way in hell I could foresee 2020. So anyway, I wanted 1,000 points of lizards as quickly and as cheaply as possible. Thus, I found my way onto Lustria Online, a fantastic internet forum dedicated to all things Lizardmen, Seraphon, or salamanders from Kings of War. And it was great. I had a painting blog and I occasionally interacted with the community. Mostly just lurking though. It was a nice time. So in order to get 1,000 points as fast as possible, I followed a guide that recommended 2 of the fantastic Start Collecting Seraphon boxes, which would give me 24 Ceres Warriors, 2 big dinosaurs, or 4 if you're savvy, and 16 knights. This would be pretty much what I wanted, plus a wizard lizard, because Seraphon are also magic. You might note that Ceres Warriors are units of 10 and Knights 5, so that leaves me 4 Warriors and 1 Knight spare, and 2 big dinos short. Well, this is where it recommends the fantastic art of kit bashing. I love kit bashing models. It's a shame it requires a bit more kits than I've got, but I'm slowly building up my bits box. So you've seen my warriors and you've seen my knights, or they're playing now. This is all pre-recorded, but I wanted to shout out the knights as being possibly the worst models I've ever painted. God, they suck. I'm glad I have 15, so I don't need to worry about getting any more. And if I need more, I'm gonna commission some one-page rule versions and get them painted. So yeah, besides that, you can see that I'm using the 16th Knight as a Scar Veteran on Cold One, which I think is gonna get replaced with the new Scar Veteran on Agradon. This is coming out before the Codex. AOS 3 Saurus will be very interesting. He is really just the old Warhammer hero trope of being a dude with more ornamentation on him. Next up is my old Carnosaur, which is kind of rough and contained the non-magnetized version of the Scarvet and the precursor to my paint scheme. I fucked up putting it on the back of the rider, so no Dino Rider. Instead, I decided to use him to tell a little story of the beast now returning to protect his fallen rider after he got knocked off, and it will die defending him. Now this is the way you get over 1,000 points from the boxes. Creating some wild kit bashing, and I think most players have one of these. It's like the blender donut of Lizardman kit bashes, the swimming Troglodon. I really dig this scheme here for my Beastmaster skinks, which are blue and yellow heads, and it makes it look very natural, which is good because I based it off an actual lizard I found online. Back to the big lizard, I didn't make the Trog too fat, but he could have been much bigger to match the standing Carnosaur. This does make him more snake-like, which I think helps a lot. The green stuff scales are pretty crap. I'm not much of a sculptor, especially with green stuff, but I think it works for now, and it's definitely on my to-do list to improve. The Troglodon is also blue and yellow to match his rider, and it screams, "I'm dangerous, I will poison you," which is 100% what I wanted, and I'm glad it worked out. So yeah, here's my swimming Troglodon. With this, I got about 1,000 points of units on the table for around 50 quid. So now the better Carnosaur. I painted this guy about 12 to 18 months after the first one in that time, and I think I've done a lot better. I could highlight properly. I'm still working on it at this time, but it's better now. It's worth noting, until I get my hands on a Stein Drake, these are my biggest models that I own, and I'm looking forward to get that dragon. Anyway, this is from my second purchase of the box, and there is a lot of improvement here, and that's why I'm really happy with it. It's also magnetized, which is a really fun hobby project, and I recommend trying something like that at least once in the future. Here's the Troglodon version. I really like the sail and the venom sacs. I think they look particularly good. The rider isn't attached because I just don't like how the riders sit on the dinosaurs. I really wish I could run the Troglodon and Carnosaur on their own for more dino action, but I think you can in one-page rules, so maybe I'll give that a go. Here are a bunch of the other skinks I've done. I'm not a massive fan of skinks. The most important one is the Red Skink Star Priest, as this was my first Seraphon model and was my precursor to my Fire Lizards, who I think I called the Scions of the Bronze City, and he was the spiritual head after the loss of the Slan, alongside the Old Blood on Carnosaur being the master of the military force, and the Sunblood, the leader of the defensive military forces. This is fun lore for my lizards. 2 more units left I want to talk about before some infinity. First is the Bastillodon, or as one person put it, my roast turkey. This may be the sole scheme I've come up with that I personally really adore. It's in the theme of fire lizards. I had the idea that all my lizards imbued with fire magic, so flaming jaws, spells, weapons, and my swords erupt into flames into combat, hence the sort of black and red scheme. The cool idea I had was the Bastillodon's armoured plates would heat up and turn into a molten magma shield to absorb blows. just turning arrows to ash and spears to kindling as they tried to bring down this tank of a monster. I did have the idea of a second one with a harpoon coming out of it, handle on fire and the armour just molten white trying to save the beast by burning so bright. But that's a hobby project that's firmly in the very much future pile. So how did I do the scheme? Well, I base coated white and I had a simple rule. The further out it got, the more it cooled, therefore it would be browner. So white in recesses since it would be the hottest there, then slowly going from yellow to orange to brown to red with a dry brush and overbrushing to get the look, and I think I utterly nailed it. You might be thinking, yeah, it's okay, the golds are meh, and I'll agree the concept is sound, and I'm down to try it again, maybe with some crackle paint to help try and get that working. Last serious bit to talk about is my Temple Guard. I love these. I think they're what Saurius warriors should be, and I love halberd units. I painted them well and I wish I played with them at all, but I have two units here. One 5-man unit for guard and croak and one 10-man unit to wade into the midfield and beat things with their lizard fury. So besides loving the unit, why do I love these ones? Well, to be cheesy, but it's one of the few sets of models my wife has surprised me with for Christmas, and I absolutely adore her for going out of her way to do this. I adore my wife in general, but this was a sweet gesture and I love the models. And to be honest, I'm yet to see another company do Temple Guards so well. Okay, these still aren't Infinity, but bear with me, I love dwarves. The Warden King from GW is the guy in the centre, and he's one of my favourite dwarf hero models out there. And the dwarves themselves are the Oathmark Heavy Infantry Dwarf Kit, and I love the kit. And I seriously want a huge army of dwarves. I don't even know what game for, I just want the dwarves. The scheme was nice and simple and it just grabbed me. Maybe I'll do a video in the future where I just rant about my future ideas for a huge dwarf kingdom army full of heroes and units and kit bashes, or maybe there might be a hobby series for that on my channel. Finally, some Infinity. Military orders first, since I consider it my first army, as it's the one I know and understand the best, but even then I'm not very good, so eh. Anyway, I only have 20-ish military order models, and for the upcoming tournament in Sterling, whenever that is, it's postponed at the moment, I only need to proxy a few models. This collection is dwarfed by my Ariadna, but that's fine. Lots of that is unpainted. I do still need to buy basically all the contents of the Knight Hospitaller action pack, but I will get that eventually. But in the meantime, Ariadna can sub in. So my first major purchase for Infinity was the Military Order action pack, and I was really happy to get it. And I'm still happy with it, just not massively sure what to do with the Knight of Justice. I have a power pack list with him, but that's like only one list. Anyway, on screen you'll see my light infantry, and you can see me working out my scheme here for military orders in general. You can see here I'm still very much in the GW school of painting with poor edge highlighting. I do a thing here with heavy infantry or medium infantry and special light infantry with black cloth of a nice satin black dry brushed with some grey to just make it seem a bit more black cloth like. The Knight Commander has a really nice scheme here, and I'll probably do something similar for the Order Sergeants when I get some. The white was grey and highlighted up, but it maybe wasn't the best. Moving to the medium infantry in the box, it's pretty similar with the schemes and both work out well, but I want to specifically shout out as the Infirmer as goddamn awful to put together between the spear bending all of the time, the sword arm just not wanting to go on, and all of the overlapping parts for what is, to be honest, a wonderful sculpt. Just a pain of a model. Done a wee red cross on the flag as a sign of sort of healing. The Blackfire is also pretty much the same as the Knight Commander, and it's a very nice fit to that model. As it shows the Knight of Justice and the Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, I'll talk about why military orders. Why? Well, when I started playing, I mentioned it was a good few years ago and the TTS mod used still had a lot of the Ice Storm starter stuff as its starter missions, or at least the guy I was playing with, Cavrion, had the Ice Storm starter and they picked Nomads, which is fair, Nomads are pretty cool. Which meant I got to play Pano, and straight up the Father Knight drew me in immediately. Orcs are cool and the Nisi is still my OG favourite model, but the Father Knight was the big one. As we moved out starting, I wanted to play a Sectorio as I had no clue about vanilla, so I went into military orders, and from there I was hooked even more. It was also an advantage that basically most of my units had 2 wounds, so if I cocked it up I was still alive. I do assume Imperial Army was out, but no one pointed me towards them, or if they did, I just wasn't interested in using. Also, melee is cool. I love getting into melee. It's like the natural conclusion of power armor and heavy infantry. So yeah, getting into MO was a crutch for a new player, and because melee is cool. Which, let's be honest, if you're gonna get into a faction, coolness should be why. Final lad slash lady from the box is my favourite knight, or, well, that swaps with the Teutonic Knights regularly, and that is the Knight of Santiago. The scheme was recommended to me by Koala on Discord, and I really love it. For dark armour, I was told warm dark browns, which was Skaven Blight Dinge, then highlighted with Storm Vermin fur, and I really like this combination. Combined with the black under armour, cloak, and red undercloak, it oozes style. And yes, it's a little edgy, but I don't care. It's my go-to colour scheme for Assault, Heavy Infantry and Military Order now, and you'll see it improved on my Teutonic Knights. I love this box, and it's a great box for starting military orders, and I thoroughly recommend it for getting into the faction. I even do so in my starter guide. Check the card in the top right. Next up is Mendoza, and he has the same vibes as the Knight Commander, but I've learned a lot since him, and he's one of the models I really want to repaint the most. I tried wet blinding the sword, but it failed, so I got the candy corn sword. The armour and everything else is fine, but just a lot of little things I want to fix. I tried spending as much time as possible on him, and it just didn't work. That's not my painting style, and all I want to really do when I paint is chill, so maybe that's the way I get better results. Teutonic Knights are the same as the Santiago in terms of scheme, and like I said, I think I improved it here by using the actual paints rather than mixing colours to match, which I think I've done fairly well. I also realistically highlighted using Photoshop, and again, I think that worked quite well. I learned a lot about how to place highlights from it. Black, red, and dark schemes are really cool, and I love the idea of a Varuna orc, so why not a Varuna style Teutonic Knight? So yes, I gave him a skull face, and yes, is very edgy, but you know what, I don't care. All three suit the models and the theme of the profiles it represents. The Spec Ops Sergeant I'm now proxying as a Trinitarian, as I'm not a massive fan of the models, but I love the profiles. They really need masks or helmet versions, so I found one I liked and I use it for them. I might also get a Hundun as well, we'll see. The highlight of this scheme is the Urban Camel, which I think helps sell it as a skirmisher and not just a light infantry with a sniper. Bots now, I love painting bots. They're really nice, simple and fun to paint. Flat surfaces mean I can really learn how to highlight, and I can combine it with edge highlighting to get a really nice effect. Like here in the drone bots I'm particularly happy with. It's a thick highlight because I'd done this a while ago, so again I've gotten better since then, but I think it still looks great. The camera and the bubblegum combi rifle came out really well, and I love the design of them, and I even gush about them in my top 5 rems. Following up on the bots is my Vostok Bulletier. I'm really happy with this, and it's a third of the reason I got the Beyond Crimson Stone box alongside the Scots Guard and the Soldat, who as of March 27th is still not painted after buying them a year ago. I kinda got waylaid by a big bulk order I bought. We'll see that in a minute. I did more panel highlighting than edge highlighting here for what I think is a better result. The time difference between the 3 bots is actually only a couple of weeks. I kind of really sat down and focused on what I was doing here. Finally are my 2 mule bots, who I painted these very differently as part of a competition. So the best one would get submitted to the IGL painting competition. The one with the horn was painted using analogous colours, and I started with a deep blue and highlighted up, and the other was painted using complementary colours, which meant I started with browns and slowly changed that into blues to emphasise the shadows. Did it make much difference? I don't think so. It's a few subtle differences. But eventually both got me what I wanted, and I actually entered the analogous one into the painting competition because I thought it looked the better of the 2. What I learned here was effort to effect. I tried another model in this style, going purple to green and going from pink to orange, and both got really good effects. But if I think I was to do the style of complementary base coats into different colours, I would do it minimally for the most effect. So maybe on a lot of Yuzheng power armour or on patchers. Something that's all armour, so it can be done all very quickly and all in a lot of stages. I don't have an airbrush, so this is all by hand. I did put it on the Frontovlik epoxy, I'll show in a second, and I really dig it there, as the extra shadows added a lot to the armour, but there I spent a lot less time. So yeah, for me, every model is a learning experience. Kosmoflot now, surprisingly, there's only 6 models here. The Ariadna is the bulk of my collection, but the bulk of that is Caledonia. I'll get to that in a bit, but I'm covering the Kosmoflot specific units first, and Octavia, who is also here. Octavia, I got this as part of a Caledonia lot, and I guess I'll use her as a Scots missile or a Catamaran or something. I don't have many cheap launchers in my army except for military orders. So yeah, I mentioned just a second ago I used pink as the base coat and then highlighted up to yellow, and I think it worked well. My non-colorblind wife does say it is more orange, but I don't know, I think it's a pretty yellow. Anyway, I think this works because it adds in depth. Additionally, the non-metallic gun keeps her feeling fairly murky as well. The fair hair and legs look great as well, and I'm fairly happy with the model overall. This also was my last miniature of 2022, and I asked my wife for colour schemes and she picked out a fairly nice scheme, although possibly as a joke. I directed it, but she gave me the broad strokes, so it was a fun little project as it's nothing like my other schemes. Another mercenary here, which is my aerocam for my Warcore. The Warcore remains unpainted, so this little nerd is a HVT objective marker and is a neat little bean. So despite owning Beyond Crimson Stone for Ariadna, I don't have the Ariadna half painted, but this Wildcat is proxies as a frontoblet and was my third attempt at complementary colour things and my first use of contrast, and hot damn, I love me contrast now. I used it for browns and it worked really well. So the greens, I started with a purple and I kept in mixing greens until it was where it is now. It's still a little purpley in the shadows, but I think it gives it a really nice effect. I'm also really happy with the volumetric highlighting on the visor, and the gun looks good at 6 feet. I do love the pose. The tactical reload is fun and better than point rifle, point pistol pose with sword. So the other Corregidor turned Ariadna is my Tomcat turned Paracommando / Crusader Brethren. While I let these photos roll and the Polaris handler, why Kosmoflot? Why get into Space Ariadna? So I mean, I wanted to do Caledonia in N4, but unfortunately it's out of production, and for like 6 months it wasn't in the game. So I decided to do an in-production army, and Kosmoflot had some of the best bits of Caledonia, including Fate Warmers, so perfect, and now it's my third army after Military Orders and Caledonia. I will still play it when I get Patchers, Stranics, EM bots, and the packs, all that. I don't need any of them, but they're all just so cool. I know I got first world problems here of proxying Caledonia as Kosmoflot, which is wild for some people, but I got lucky. One thing I love about Kosmoflot that I dislike about Caledonia is that it's a fairly well-tooled sectorial, so I'm not going, oh, smoke no work and I don't have MSV, so I guess I'm kind of borked against these units. No, I have options, and if I don't have options, I tend to not like a sectorial. I do still wish I could transplant some Caledonia units into Kosmoflot, but I guess I'll live. Right, so the bear pod, I love them as a sculpt and a concept. It's one of those things you can do a lot with the different types of bears, be it brown, grizzly or polar, or beloved bear characters. Well, I nearly did Winnie the Pooh, but I hate yellow. So I went for a polar bear because I hate white less and because it's slightly easier. I still wanted to make it clear that he's a Scot in space, so the armour was done in my Caledonia dark steel method I'll talk a bit about later. Plenty of saltires adorn Corporal Winnie. I did keep the name, but I used British markings and wrote Winnie in Cyrillic on his chest. It's not very clear, but it's not too bad. For the fur, I think I started with Zandri dust and then dry brushed white to get the effect, which I think was the right way to do it, but I reckon a second bear I could make it look a lot better. Or I neglect the idea and make Sergeant Paddington sandwich and all. The Chernobog is my most recent finished model and I think one of my quickest to paint for its size, and I love it. It was a bit of an ache to paint because it's just so big. I had to paint him leg by leg, then the underhatch and then the torso. So the odd scheme, well, it's based off a Warrior IFE, so it's a British Scottish Army forest scheme, which was incredibly hard to find since Britain has fought in desert wars for the last 20 years. So yeah, a lot of effort with 3 lots of colours and 3 lots of highlighting. I eventually stopped with this model just because I reached the tipping point where I felt that anything I'd done would just cock the model up. So I didn't feel like it was worth the risk. I could go and weather it, but I'm very hesitant. It's the first big model I've done in about 2 or 3 years since the Bear and Ronians aren't actually that big, but I love what I've done with it. I'll probably get proxied as a Seraph or a Salamandra as well. Overall, I think the scheme sells it as a more realistic vehicle than a stompy battle walker should be. So now, Caledonia. These three you're seeing here are my first three Infinity models, and outside the Mormor, I really want to repaint them. The Catamaran obviously needs a rebase, and he's chipping really badly, so a proper clean repaint and rebase, and he'll be grand. I've even got a base ready for him. I've got another one in my Caledonia lot I'll talk about in a minute, so I'll do both at the same time. Fortunately for my wallet, I won't take more than two, so that's pretty good. Wallace looks okay, but a little rough. I'm going to redo him to make him look more like a Wolver, since I have new Wallace from Beyond Crimson Stone. Lastly is my heavy machine gun Mormor, who is in my heavy infantry video, and you can hear me gush about it there and show it as my favourite Infinity Mini. But I put a lot of effort into the Mormor, and he set up all of my Caledonia models schemes going forward. What a great three models to get into Infinity with. Okay, well the volunteers, Isabel and a Wolver play across the screen, let's talk about me getting into Caledonia. Well, originally in N3, I thought for a while that Caledonia was a bit of a caricature of Scotland. It was all Braveheart and Freedom and Tartan, and I just rolled my eyes and I played military orders instead. When I spent time away from Infinity, I slowly realised that Caledonia wasn't a parody, or well, it kind of was, but rather it's not one out of malice, but more out of someone seeing it and going, well, isn't that just neat? Which I think Scotland is, if you can't tell by my wonderful accent. So yeah, when I cottoned on and wanted to get into Infinity properly, I wanted to get a bunch of the Scots, but unfortunately we were a bit skint at the time and I didn't manage to get any before they went out of production. And I immediately regretted that. I was even willing to get it directly from Corvus Belli, but I ran out of time unfortunately. Anyway, eventually after months of looking, I came across an eBay lot of TAC in Caledonia. Funds were free and my wife said, hey look, why not ask for a split? You won't get it if you won't ask. So I did, and I picked this up for what was a really good price. I got the contents of the Caledonia starter, old Uxia Spec Ops, 2 SAS from the blister, a 112 Octavia HMG Grey, Cameronian McMurray, 4 Galwegians and Wallace number 3. This was a good deal and it got me a lot of my dream army. Of Caledonia I'm just missing the Wolver box and the old Scots Guard, and the old Volunteer box as well. So yeah, I'm really happy with all of the paints and all the sculpts and all. Just be persistent and you'll eventually get your dream army. The next model is the old grey I purchased for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm kind of glad I got it now, as I have 3 of the 4 grey sculpts out there and all 4 of the Mormor sculpts. But this guy shows his age. He's a wee baldy oldie. I honestly just find the pose hilarious and it was a good test for my Caledonia models. More saltires, more grains and more unpainted tartan cloth. Cadian. I love this sculpt. The Mo Sislak one doesn't really do it for me, so I went and got the Defiance one. This model was going to be a competition piece for the IGL S2 category, but I forgot to take the before pick, so I couldn't submit him. He's okay, not my best work, and it was the first time I'd used contrast, but damn, I was impressed. It took a bit of getting used to, but I really loved the ease of snakebite leather and Guilliman flesh. But it was worth it. Getting it based took a few minutes of low effort work, then I could spend more time on highlighting the sword and other parts of the model. Uxia and my SAS, the 2 best skirmishers in the game, and I will defend that statement. Uxia is the old pistol model, and my wife said that she has both her bum and boobs out, which is impressive. And I do agree, it's very old school Corvus Belli. I painted her more modestly because, to be honest, I forgot she had her belly out, and it's probably very cold on Ariadne, so she's covered up. My black grey fabric is back and works really well to keep the skirmishers looking stealthy. Other than that, nothing special, and the SAS turned out well. It looks like his mum went really out of her way to knit him a nice cap. The Cameronian next, and I really like him. I tried to paint the tartan, but I'll be honest, it doesn't look great. I'm really struggling to get good thin lines. I'll need to try and get better at it, but I think the face fur and the axe still rock. It's still striking though, and I was attempted to the Gordon tartan from World War I, which was actually used by the Cameronian regiment, which is a very nice reference, Corvus Belli. Fun fact, those chain rifles are the same size as the ones the SAS and the Galwegians use, which kind of really shows how big the Cameronian is. Last 3 models now, the T2 rifle Mormor and the old one, which is a nice pairing on how Corvus Belli sculpts have really advanced. While I prefer the modern heavy machine gun, the old T2 is the one with more character of the T2 rifles, even if the modern one is a better sculpt. Both used dark metals, which was black and lead belcher mixed together, then highlighted with lead belcher, and silver to get a really nice, dark, dense metal. The blue is very royal as well as fits the landed status of the Mormor. Fun story, I originally wrote Abla on the old T2 rifle rather than Alba, which means I can't even spell my own country's name. The last model, and one of my best in my opinion, was my entry for that IGL S2 painting competition. My grey T2 rifle from the starter box. By the time this video drops, I'll know if I've won, which I highly doubt because of the skill of IGL painters like Perzan and Fufa. And future Ryan commenting here, I didn't even make the top 3. I'm not surprised. Hot damn, those were some good models. But anyway, I named this piece At Least I'm Not CC15, in reference to all those crap CC units that are given prominent CCWs in their model form. Greys used to be crap in CC, but now they're at least 21, which isn't bad. It's not great, but it's not awful. Anyway, I spent the time on this one, and I think it really worked out. I spent the time highlighting the leathers, the boots, and making the cloth look good. I made the gun more interesting by adding some browns, rather than my usual black and silver screen. The sword also got a nice leather wrap and a bronze hilt to make it look even better. I highlighted the sword with silver manually to make it look shiny, and I think it worked, but this is something I want to improve on. The hair I think was just an off-white then snakebiter leather to get that lovely brown, and again, it worked so really well. The skin was Guilliman flesh and lightly highlighted, and for a change, the eyes actually look good. It's a miracle I managed it. The shoulder pads were also weathered with snakebiter leather, which I think looks like a great rust or grime. I also based this model with long grass and some mud texture paste for a change. I think it ties it all together. And that was my video on my armies. Yeah, I paint fairly often. Not the best painter to be honest, but I hope you enjoyed me talking about a bunch of what I think are cool models. If you have some neat stories around your models, let me know into the comments below. I read every one of them, and I do either respond or at least mark them as kind of read. Regular videos will continue next week, so remember to like and subscribe to see them. Thanks for watching.